G'day and welcome to On The Esky, an Aussie sports podcast where we like to wrap up the week that was in sport, dribble a little, have a few squee moi-mois and talk about life and the sporting world. Boys, cricket, the tour of India has finished up. Australia play out a 2-1 loss to India. We will chat about that. We'll chat about the absolute road that there was there in Ahmedabad. Plus, crazy scenes in New Zealand. For the second test in a row, one goes down to the final ball. The AFL kicks off in 2 nights. Big time with Richmond and Carlton on Thursday night. There's 4 of us at the table. We've got our resident AFL correspondent live, and we'll have a chat with him in just a second. We'll do about an hour preview, pretty rapid, through each of the teams. A big recruit and a little prediction for each team. Rugby league, fins up. Dolphins are 2.
They'll catch one day.
2-0. I said they'll come dead last, so probably maybe long season. Who knows? Final round. We'll just talk some UFC. 285, given that it was 9 days ago now. John Jones definitely re-enters the GOAT chat.
Sound effect.
Yeah, did you do it? Do a Johnny Jones. He's bad.
Yeah, so he did it and it wasn't that good, so I could do one which would be like, and there you go. Is John Jones the sheep? That's what we'll discuss. Normally we do talk some US sports, some NBA, some NFL. We'd like to talk some soccer, F1. We're going to leave that for our next pod, so we'll focus on cricket, footy, UFC chat. We do like to start this show by shouting a beer. I'm going to pass it to you, Steamer. Welcome. It's been close to 9 months, I think, since you've been on the pod. How are you, and who will you be shouting a beer?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back tonight, boys. Special Tuesday night episode. Yes. Good to be here. So I'm feeling generous. I haven't been here for a while, so I'm going to open up the wallet and shout the WA Warriors a few beers. They've probably been having a few celebrating back-to-back Marsh Cups. Mm-hmm. Of course, the Scorchers have also gone back-to-back in the Big Bash. Mm-hmm. And the Sheffield Shield, I think the Warriors are looking to go back-to-back as well. So they're going a clean sweep in domestic Aussie cricket. And then, particular in the Warriors, a person who's been a big part of their success for many years, Shaun Marsh, announced his retirement from WA cricket. He's still going to keep playing for Renegades, I believe, but he debuted as a 17-year-old, 22 years later, now 39-year-old, announcing his retirement. All-time leading run scorer for WA, 12,811 runs. That's more than WA greats like Langer, Voges, Tom Moody, Mr. Cricket. So got a ton on debut for Australia. Didn't translate as much success as he had in the baggy black to the baggy green. But I'll shout the Warriors and Shaun Marsh a beer today.
WA cricket, starting to build a bit of a dynasty. You'd think the Scorchers have, just been perennial winners in the Big Bash League, and now the Warriors are stringing a few together. I don't want to, toot the horn too early, but starting to give late 90s, early noughties New South Wales Blues vibes.
Big Bash overseas draft. Maybe they should mix it up, do the domestic draft.
Yeah. Well, and we've spoken about it on the podcast
That's
before.
Opening a can of worms.
Big time. A big part of their success has been local talent going through and playing in that Scorchers and Warriors system.
WA/Aussie.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty well. Shauno, you're back again. No need for any niceties of how you're doing. Just into your shout of beer if you wouldn't mind.
Just get the ball no love down the end of the table. For me, Benson Henderson is my shout of beer. He's retiring at the age of 39 from mixed martial arts. Won the UFC lightweight belt. Been fighting since 2006 with a record of 42 total fights, 30 wins, 12 losses. Been fighting in Bellator, trying to win the belt in this one. Couldn't get it done. And has decided to hang the gloves up. So a long storied career. one of those guys in the growth and in that, taking that lightweight division to a new level at that time in the 2010s, etc. Is a big name in the UFC. So wishing him all the best and good luck in the future.
It's a good day to be a 39-year-old retiring.
Yeah.
A few years.
Have you got a 39-year-old retiring guy?
I do not. I do not.
Bit younger.
A little bit younger. Hopefully he sticks around a little bit longer for my sake and for Liverpool's sake. So I'm shouting Mo Salah a beer, all being probably non-alcoholic beer. And so this one's probably a little bit delayed because we haven't had a podcast in the last couple of days, but he broke the all-time Premier League goal scoring record for Liverpool on 129 goals. And that was the other week. Unfortunately, he did miss penalty goal this weekend against Bournemouth, which meant that Liverpool lost. So he probably needs a beer to...
Salah on that all-time list, he sits seventh. But
Yep.
Premier League, he goes to number 1.
Yep.
Pretty impressive.
That's it.
Pretty impressive considering he could definitely climb up those ranks pretty quickly in terms of all-time.
Yeah, definitely.
Very good. I will quickly shout a beer out to the Sacramento Kings. They have got first time since 2005-2006 season. They did have a pretty good run in the early noughties, not that any of us would remember it, given their recent form of essentially stinking it up. Their best finish in the last 12 years has been 9th in the West. Lots of cellar dwelling since then. But they're currently 3rd in the West, and they've got 40 wins. So beam me up. As soon as they implemented that beam, vibes of the Luxor in Vegas there, just shining one up. Whether or not they are able to translate this into the playoffs and who knows, a Western Conference Finals, time will tell. But definitely the best Sacramento Kings season in recent memories. So beam me up, Matthew Dellavedova, and enjoy a few cold ones on behalf of me from the Esky. Mop of the week, boys. Manchester United. Monks has been looking up the history books here. We're just starting to get a little bit of confidence. I was, at least, as a Manchester United fan. Champions League looking like it's likely. Finishing 3rd in the league looking like it's likely. Getting absolutely dicked, pants pulled down 7-0 by Liverpool last week. Didn't look that likely. And then a 4th worst loss in their history.
Yes, equal. So they've lost by 7-0 4 times. So credit to them for not going worst of all time.
No 8s.
Yeah, that's it. No 8s. But yeah, the first time that they've lost by 7-0, or probably by any sort of margin to Greece in the last 90 odd years. The last time that they lost by 7-0 was back in December, Boxing Day, December 1931, to the Wolves.
Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
Handed out paddlings in 1931.
That's it.
Times.
That's it. Yeah.
Who knows how that means the rest of the season's going to shape up for United. Had been looking pretty good until that, but strange things happen in the Premier League. League tonight, a little bit of UFC, but we will start with the cricket. Monks, if you wouldn't mind.
You want to give me a second? This is just playing up down this end. We might do a restart. I can't get the thingy to stabilise. It just keeps dropping out.
Want to pause it there?
Dropping the stream, or
Maybe stabilising. Just give me a second.
Keep talking, or
Keep talking. It seems okay. That's number's not going up anymore. All right, keep going. Go it. Let's do some cricket.
Let's talk some cricket.
We'll check it after the cricket.
the 4th test in Ahmedabad finishes as a scintillating draw that never got to the 4th innings. Strange old series. We'll talk about the series after this test in a second. But probably the big story coming out of this one was Virat Kohli getting that monkey off his back, scoring a big ton and staying in touch with the Fab Four, boys. Thoughts on Kohli?
What, day 4, day 5 cricket in India was the big big story of the test.
Yeah, that too.
How different, a deck can be that in Ahmedabad, which looked like an absolute road and looked like a bit more of a traditional cricket deck than what we've seen dished up in the first three tests.
I'm surprised that they actually went over the border and asked the Pakistanis how to make a pitch and brought it in, dropped it in. A little bit of a road. And I saw one of Ashwin's comments. He even commented and was like, to get 7 on that road was, you get a toil away. So even using that analogy of calling it a road, because that's what it was. You could see that
when you've got the series wrapped up, you don't need to.
That too, but
get your batters into form.
Yes,
the spinners have done all right early in the series.
But as a stark contrast to the pitches that they played on the first 3, which they were 2.5 day test at most, with a lot of turn, this one really didn't offer up anything. As we said, played out as a road with a lot of good batting there, not just
tons
from
all around.
Yeah, tons all around, not just from our end, but also from the Australian team and the Indian team.
Aussie, we got to talk about him. 180, most balls ever faced by an Aussie in India. His form is sublime. A lot of rhetoric as well around the Ashes moving forward. Will Usman and Travis Head be the opening partnership there?
Because Head
come June,
got
July.
90 in the second in this as well. So again, going to that point about getting into some form. Is David Warner too hurt, too old? Do they go with Head as an opener?
Well, I guess the counter side of that is Hanscom. Do you lock him at 5 or is he you spin batter at 5, and how's he go on the green decks in England? Because that's your choice, really, isn't it? That's Warner or Hanscom, but at different spots in the order.
Or you play someone else there, does Renshaw come back to it? Was one of those other guys that's batting at the moment in Shield. Do they kind of fit in? Do they play around with that 5th spot? Is that easier to find than your openers, with Usman and Head kind of doing a solid job there for us in this series? I think Head coming in and actually opening really changed. Actually being in the side probably helps to start with. Really kind of helped change the series. I think that Cam Green as well, as we talked about in the past, that really was our best 11, minus the Australian captain, that really even out the playing field. I think it was more competitive across the two teams that way. And I guess going to India, you got to give Gill a big shout out as well, coming in for the underperforming Rahul and turning up as well as a young fella.
He's in form in all formats.
He looks unbelievable.
He's still very, very young too.
23, I think. Yeah. I can chase that one up.
Plenty of cricket ahead of him.
Big time.
Yeah.
Axar Patel doing more with the stick than the ball.
Dude,
it's becoming more his standard.
Absolute thorn in our side, because he wasn't really doing that much with the ball. Not that he needed to with Ashwin and Jadu bowling the way that they did, but we don't know how to get him out.
Yeah.
You talk about a pesky, comes in at 8 and just scores bolt runs against us.
It wouldn't surprise me if they switch Jadeja from 5 and they put Patel in there. Like, they've both been batting well. They could definitely, mix up that order. Yeah, definitely. With the all-rounders.
Just back to Shubman Gill, 23 years of age, first-class average at 53, and ODI average through 21 games, 73, if you wouldn't mind. So he is going to be a capital P-R-O-B lem moving forward.
And then, this test match ended, in a draw. They kind of called it off. I think when Gill and Pujara were having a bowl, kind of it was like, there's
they didn't even try it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. There's no end in sight. There's probably no reason to play the next hour and a half of this game. Let's get out of here.
Should mention on our side a young fellow who got his first test ton after 6 or 7 times in the nervous 70s, nervous 80s.
Yeah, never a nervous 90s, was it? It was always 70s and 80s.
Got a bit nervous, bit early, but good to see Cam Green ton up. That was good partnership between him and Uzi.
A bit of a long time coming. I think a lot of people expected this to come. Again, we speak about how young Shubman Gill is. Cam Green is so young. He's going to play so much Test cricket, and he can score tons in India. So say what you like about the deck being pretty good. I think Matthew Hayden had some comments around that. But
the guys who forked out 3-0 from the IPL would have been watching that and gone licking their lips and having some more of that come their way.
Well, great point, because we can talk about World Test Championships and Ashes and the rest of it, but the big sort of talking point for cricket in the next few months will be the Indian Premier League.
Definitely.
And quick shout outs, because we haven't covered it already, but Meg Lanning and Alyssa Healy off to really good starts over there in the WPL for their respective franchises. Boys, I want to throw it back to Coley. Does 3 years in the wilderness and then 186 on a road in Ahmedabad sort of take heaps of pressure off him, or is this akin to David Warner being in the wilderness for a long time and then scoring a big, important double ton at the MCG? Thoughts on that one, please?
Well, I think he's got to follow it up. That's the you want this to start a new vein of form. The next one will be the World Test Championship, so you want to see him in a neutral venue. That's probably the big caveat. We've got two teams that aren't home favourite in this. It's a neutral venue. They'll come in on a deck that's probably turn less and swing more. Who does that favour? And it kind of levels out the playing field a little bit. So that'll be interesting, and that could be a good test of that capability of whether, as his scores start to come. I think he scored decent scores, like 50s and that, but he just hasn't converted 50s, hasn't converted any of them. So his conversion rate was ridiculous, then it kind of dropped off. Let's see if he can start turning that around, which we prefer he didn't. But good luck to him.
Yeah.
Was it really only Sharma who turned up in the first 3 matches, and then four or 5 tons in this game? So
well, exactly. Well, after Australia's first innings, Australia had more tons in this series than India did. So they only. It was good that Indians scored.
Feels a bit. You want to make your tons when the series is on the line, but then no one did.
No,
Rohit in the first match, and then the other 2 matches barely. Some teams were struggling. Australia to get a ton for the whole team. So you want to make your runs at the important part of the series, don't you? A bit of a dead rubber. This one. So hard to tell how that translates to the future.
That's an interesting sort of segue into our thoughts on the series as a whole. Obviously, this test match, very unusual compared to the other conditions that we saw in the first 3. Do we think the BCCI and the preparation of these decks is going down a dangerous path in these tests that only last 2.5 days?
We know they prefer that type of cricket. They did get 1 rating of poor. Wasn't sure about. I think the first one was okay. The second one was a poor.
I think they had 2 pours.
2 pours. So that's that.
As opposed to Nagpur.
Yeah.
A little smug smile.
So that might come back on them at some point, whether that's fines or things like that. But they probably don't give a fuck about that, the BCCI. So it suits their style. It suits the 3 spinners. And you saw, I guess maybe there's a difference for when we saw England go over there and not really pick spin heavy, and then Joe Root was, the second fiddle. It was like Australia actually went with specialist spinners to try and compete spin for spin with India, and went pretty close. So they are playing, I guess, a dangerous game, and that maybe you'll get a side which has quality enough spinners, which is hard because India's probably the spin central. But it's not to say that you can't bring some
talent. Other Asian nations. Spinners, but that's the other side of it. You've got to bat on the deck as well, and there weren't high scoring matches apart from that 4th Test match. So it's kind of, you make it hard to bat on. Well, you've got to go out there and bat on it as well.
We saw that in the 3rd Test. Barely made 100. So
I think it's dangerous. I think they're playing Russian roulette with preparing decks like this, because you've got guys like Todd Murphy and Matt Kuhneman coming over, and not to take away from them stepping up on the big stage, but you've got guys
young fellas that are
on their first series going out there taking 5 for 14 and Murphy getting 8 for.
There was comments today that I can't can't remember. I think it was Sharma, the captain, was saying this is the best spin attack we've faced in 10 years in India. So
Murphy would have played more Test matches than Shield matches now.
Yeah. Well, we had 2. I think he had 2 or 3 before we went over there. So I think it is a bit of a slippery slope, if you will, for the Indian team, and they're just sort of preparing these decks, knowing that Jadu and Ashwin have absolutely got our number, and we spoke about. Jadu being our daddy, and we are, as Aussie cricket fans, legitimately scared of going over and watching the 2 Ravis do their work. But I do wonder if that is setting up a few of these other guys to fail over there. We saw in the first 3 tests, guys not named Rohit Sharma really struggle with the bat for India.
Yeah, and when are they going to play the series again? Is it 3 years or 2?
So it should be every 2 years, but it's going to 5 tests, but I think the return to Australia is 4, and then it goes to 5 again the next time they're in India, I think.
Yeah, okay.
But my point being is, we found some young fellas, they've got time to now go away and actually work on their craft, improve on their craft, got a lot of experience from this. Probably won't play much for Australia because Nathan Lyon will hold that spot down for the foreseeable future. But they can go away and toil knowing that, hey, when my number's going to be called when we're going back to India, let's be prepared to go over there and get some wickets, and they, with this experience, could be that's where it maybe comes back to bite India, that you've now given guys that we've experienced with it and they can go away and work on improving it, learn from Jadeja and Ashwin, and come back and do the job for Australia and get that series and steal that series.
Yeah. Just to clarify, so the first 2 tests, the BCC, ICC. Never mind. Rated the pitch average. I think indoor might have been
that was
poor, the poor one, and then obviously we'll wait and see what happens with Ahmedabad
Road.
Definitely big time road.
Let us know in the comments what you thought of the series.
Well, series stats. Let's just cover that. Usman was top run scorer. I think most runs by anyone in the last 18 months. So that's pretty
6
impressive.
tons since his recall.
Unbelievable.
Good form.
Yeah, can't ignore that.
Kohli, of course, getting the bulk of his runs with his 186. I think Akshar there with an average of 88. Speaks volumes to the tail wagging.
Runs in the series,
which is wild. 267, and from essentially a bottom order player, that can turn into a series.
Yes, it did in the first 2 matches.
Yeah.
So
in Delhi, that their first innings, his partnership with Ashwin, was big time tail wag.
Yeah, maybe looking at that, followed by Labuschagne, and again Patel outdoing Sharma as well is pretty interesting. Head in there after missing the first one. But I think, maybe little unders for Steve Smith. He might have been disappointed that, averaging the same as what Peter Hanscom was at 29.
I feel like the bloke's allowed a bad tour, considering he's the only one that has ever actually performed in Asia.
I don't think he's
historically
bad, honestly. What was his highest score? 38?
Average of 47 from Travis Head.
That's
good viewing.
I think we need to speak.
Whoever that selection was.
Again, we talk about Akshar Patel turning a whole series, and granted, if you want to look inwards, a few batting collapses probably from a batting perspective cost a series. But the selectors need to come under scrutiny, because leaving that bloke out of the first test maybe cost us a series as well.
Well, our Earth is Best had the comment in there as Australia could have won the series 2-1, but a dumb selection cost the series. He could have changed that first match. I think that the Aussies maybe come under there a bit not scared to spin, but maybe a little bit unprepared for the spin. So whether Head would have scored more than Renshaw, probably would have got more than 10. So hopefully it might have helped us out a little bit, because it was, in the end, a pretty close match.
I think I saw today, even Marnus was asked about the series, and he said, we had a good first 2 days in Delhi, and then we just had this mad collapse, and
same thing.
That goes differently. The series might go differently. So that was really where that match was won and lost, and that was a pretty critical match.
And we've covered that maybe
good old sweep shot.
Maybe there's something. There was other things on people's minds.
The first 2 days Australia played well. It was just that then the third day it just went.
Yeah.
And there was something else on
downhill
Pat
fast.
Cummins' mind that doesn't excuse the rest of the team all playing that stupid shot and getting out.
Yeah, but as
When-
the leader of the team, he also, the morale probably drops when they see their their general there having a tough time. They're like, shit, what are we going to do here? Whether that bled into the rest of them, who knows? They'll know that, but it's unfortunate. Yeah, his mum passed away, I think, yesterday.
Pass on our condolences.
Yeah. And he's not going back, of course, for the one-day series that starts on the 16th. So Steve Smith will be the Australian captain for the one-day series.
And fair enough too. I think we spoke about it last pod, but you just get some absolute nuffies in the comments saying that he needs to be with the team and this and that. Nah, family first, and then one-way unilateral ODI series these days, it doesn't really hold much weight anyway. So we'll see what Smudger can do with this ODIs upcoming. Looking at the bowlers, it was pretty dominated by blokes named Ravi Ashwin and Ravi Jadeja, 25 and 22, averaging 17 and 18, if you don't mind.
But I think it's interesting, though, that Nathan Lyon closed their wickets, 22 himself, averaging more. And then Todd Murphy, for a young fellow who's just come in on debut, getting 14 as the fourth there, still a higher average. And then you go two down, and then you got Kuhneman there with 9 and only playing in the 3. So you can see that they kind of started. I felt like they worked their way into this series. They didn't start real well, and they worked their way into it. And maybe it was different if it was a 5-match series. Maybe that changes things a little bit. But they were ahead of us, and we were kind of clawing back and chasing them. And I feel like we started to get closer to them in the back end of the series.
Any final thoughts on the series?
Wasn't a lot of pace. That's probably the main thing. The fast bowlers were an afterthought.
Well, everyone was carrying spinners.
On that last thought, if Australia has caught up and making a competitive, Game 5 is essentially at the Oval in a couple of months.
Yes.
Yeah. Bring it on. Let's go.
That's it. Yeah.
Let's just talk briefly about New Zealand and Sri Lanka. So 2 games in a row going down to the absolute last minute. We didn't need Sri Lanka to do us a favour because we won in...
We were safe.
We won in indoor, yes. So if we got swept there could have been some issues with the World Test Championship on the line. But Sri Lanka go out there and they make 355 in the first innings off the back of Kusal Mendes. There was a 5 for Tim Southey, was it? Yeah, Tim Southey picking up 5. And then the first innings for the Black Caps. Daryl Mitchell, he's shaping up to be a pretty handy cricketer. Tons up in that one. Pretty much even Stevens after the first innings. And then rolling down, Monks, if you wouldn't mind, a ton to Angelo Matthews, former skipper Angelo Matthews, 302 for the Lankans. And then let's talk about the fourth innings, the only innings that we really want to be talking about here. Absolute crazy scenes at the end of the test match. Kane Williamson having 121 not, and this one went to the final minutes. Did you boys catch any of the highlights here?
Yes, yeah. Saw the end to this. We were just watching a little bit of it before we started the pod, but crazy end to I guess what was it? It wasn't a mishit, I guess. It went straight through the keeper, and they just go for the run. They did a single run to win off the last ball. Got through to the other end and hit the stumps for an almost run out by, and use the Australian term, the bee's dick. So it was pretty close. On review, they got the run and Williams was safe, and they get the win. So
that was
impressive.
That was after a run out earlier in the same over, which then meant Neil Wagner had to go out and bat with a torn hamstring. And so that final ball, when they're
just
through
moving
for the bye, he's trying to shuffle on down with a torn string and puts a dive effort in. He's safe at the striker's end, but Williamson at the bowler's end makes it in, and victory to the Kiwis.
Grounds his bat and job done.
Yep.
Unbelievable scenes.
Play exciting cricket.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You love to have them as your second team in cricket, I feel.
Fitting, because they often come second.
The silver ferns, the silver medalists, if you will.
That's it. Yeah.
But enthralling Test cricket there.
Yeah. And that's it. Just testament to how good Test cricket is. Like you can play 4 or 5 days, and it all comes down to that last over.
Then
5-day tests. Wow.
Yeah, 5-day tests. How good are they at BCCI? All right. That'll wrap us up for some cricket chat, boys.
Yeah.
Let's run into a season preview. We've got our AFL correspondent here with us. Let's talk some Australian rules footy. We're going to run through a quick, rapid preview for the 2023 season. We're going to go alphabetically. Fits my OCD. Also fits the way that it was
By
running.
location or club name?
Club by location. By location. So we don't have to look. So luckily we've got 18 locations.
how do the Dolphins fit into this?
There's no the to look
That
up.
wouldn't fly in the AFL, obviously.
No,
Rugby
no.
League got their own sort of...
Damn it, what am I going to do for this whole segment? We're not trying to find funny town names.
Yeah, good question. Good question. We can maybe talk some Aussie rules footy. Let's start where you're living and have been for quite some time. Steam over there in Adelaide, the Crows, they finished 14th last year, 8-14. Probably their biggest name recruit is Isaac Rankin coming across from the Gold Coast Suns. What's the yarn like around Adelaide and how the Crows might fare this year?
Yeah, so gave away pick 5 for Rankin, so kind of all in for him, the former SA boy coming back home, and going to look to pair him up with a bit of a dangerous forward line. Last year's first round pick, Josh Rochelle, who started the season really hot and then kind of faded away. So have them buzzing around the feet of Big Tex and Darcy Fogarty, who started to look good towards the end of last year. It's kind of been a slow burn, but I think the big news item for the Crows is new skipper this year, Jordan Dawson. It's only second year at the club. A bit of an interesting selection. He's kind of not really the guy who's going to put the head over the ball, muscle, kind of follow my way, but he's more the guy with the clean skills. Had that famous finish on the showdown thing. He's the ball user on the outside. So
But bent it like Beckham on that kick, didn't he?
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I'm interested to see how he goes as a only second year at the club, relative newcomer. But he's got the captain's armband this year. So interested to see how the Crows go. 8 wins last year, 14th. They're thereabouts again this year. I can't see them pushing for the top 8. That's I think they're continuing the rebuild that's been on for a couple of years since that disastrous camp following the grand final loss.
Bottom 4, do you think, or a touch better?
Yeah, touch better. Yeah, I think there's probably 4 sides who will go worse than them this year.
Are they copying Carlton's plan for the 5-year where they want to be?
Yes.
It did seem very similar, and both had some lofty aspirations.
Yeah, if there's someone's homework you want to copy, you might want to take a peek at what Geelong or Richmond are doing. I don't know if you want to start it and look at what Carlton's plan is. Rarely do they come off. But,
So a lot of struggle for the next couple of years, and then maybe they'll sneak into a finals or bottle it and lead
is it
into
a plan
finals.
if you just say what you would like to happen?
Yeah, it's a plan.
A plan is like, how are you going to make that happen? It's like, we'd like to win a premiership.
Yeah,
That's our plan.
Yeah, the plan is dynasty, four premierships in a row. Yeah, four
Absolute
flags.
World domination.
We want to win the men's. We want to win the women's. Yeah, don't you all? Yeah.
If you're a little lost, Carlton and Adelaide both released 5-year plans, and they look very, very similar, and both have some lofty aspirations. Check those
How
out.
deep are the Blues into theirs? Are they like 7 or 8 years deep into their 5-year plan?
Oh, that chat goes back to
15,
about 15, 20 years probably.
Well, there's 18 teams, and all of them want to win a premiership in the next 5 years. So figure that one out.
Let's go up north to the Brisbane Lions. They finished 6th last year, won 15 games. Probably a big name recruit in the second draft pick through the father-son rule in Will Ashcroft. Steen, you like what you've seen out of him in the preseason and his measurables?
Yeah, people very, very hot on him. They're saying,
A lot of big
hottest new recruit since Nick Dacos, which is not that long ago.
Yeah.
But also quite hot.
Again, another father-son, good genes, ready to rip it up. And everything in that he did as a 17-year-old in the NAB League last year, everything he's already done in the preseason games. He looks like he's going to slot straight into that midfield and be a key part of that team from game one. And going to have some support as well. So last couple of years, probably it's been Lockie Neal has been Batman. Struggled to find Robin for him, but they got Will Ashcroft, but also got Josh Dunkley across from Western Bulldogs. So that midfield's looking pretty nice now. That's they're starting to bat a bit deeper. Still got Zorko and Lions. They're kind of towards the back end of their careers, but they can chop in there as well. McCluggage and, of course, Jared as well. So fair few midfielders that can make some good contributions for the Lions. And
It's arguably the deepest engine room in the AFL.
yes, yep.
It's getting that way.
Yeah, I mean, Doggies, they had a pretty deep one, but of course,
Doggies
you
have
take
a name value, I
Dunkley
think.
out of Doggies and,
Yeah.
and bring him across the Lions and maybe shifts the balance to the Lions. So I think Melbourne, maybe, they're very top-heavy, but maybe not as deep.
Yep.
So, Melbourne might have the best big three, but maybe not the best seven.
Shorno, resident Lions fan, thoughts?
Yeah, back what Mickey said. I think a lot of the boys were actually surprised at how aggressive they went to go get extra guys. Like I think they thought the team was pretty close, that they were maybe missing one thing, an X factor or what it is. And we talked about that. Maybe we thought Danaher maybe could have been that guy last year. And to an extent he was, but they, again, they're still kind of in the back end maybe of their window now. They really, with the guys starting to get a bit older, they kind of need to capitalise now. It's kind of like a make or break season before you start thinking about, do we need to blow it up and start all over again? But I think some of the boys were surprised that they went out and heavily recruited to get some guys in to, maybe with that thinking that, hey, we now got to really, really do something this year. Can't finish 6th again. We've got to finish top 4 and we've got to win a flag. So
Jack Gunston was another recruit. Of course, probably a Hawthorn link there with the coach's name is
Fags.
Fags, Fags. So because they lost Mick Stay, did not Mick Stay, he Mick Go.
That's pretty good.
But Gunston's a pretty much ready-made replacement for the exact same role. So they'll be top 4, I think, and a lot of the AFL.com journos I had a look this afternoon, they're very hot on the Lions to even be top 2. So.
Yeah, I think for me, it feels like make and break here. They've invested, they've got the guys they want, they really want to push to capitalise on the window that's potentially closing. I think it's flag or bust for them this year.
I'll go bullish as well. I think anything outside of the top 4 is an underachievement from this season. The bookies think similarly. They have them 3rd behind Geelong and Melbourne at $7.50.
Might have a bit of a slow start to the season with Berry, Zorko and Gardner all out for a few weeks and Adams in the backfield out.
And they've got a new
Looks
captain.
to be indefinitely.
They've got several captains.
New captain.
They've got about 18 people in the leadership group.
Yes. The whole team's
That was starting squad.
I think they couldn't give Harris Andrews the captaincy straight off the bat, so that's why they've kind of split it between him and, escapes my name, Lockie Neal. And maybe not put all the pressure on Lockie Neal to be their best player and also captain, and then have Mick Luggage fit in there as the VP as need be. So.
One of the most disappointing ends to a season that has ever occurred in sporting history
Ralph Wiggum
last year. You can pinpoint the exact moment that he breaks his heart. we are talking about the Carlton Blues. We are talking about them being in the top 8 for the entirety of the 2022 season until the last 2 minutes of that Collingwood game. A few Blue Baggers here on the table. 9th last year, won 12 games, although everyone seems to be hot on them this year. Does having that kind of expectation to sort of definitely make the top 8, maybe push the top 4, is that something that you're weary of as a Carlton fan, or is it the time is now?
Same story, different year.
Well, I'm not used to the feeling. To be honest, if you have expectations, they can be crushed.
No expectations, no disappointments.
Right, so
Very true.
My sex life for the last 12 years.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what your wife said when she married you.
It's new territory
all good.
to have expectations. And, when you spend most of the season in the top 8, it's probably fair that people expect you to get back there. I think...
How many games they win to start the year?
They were 8 and 4 at the bye, and then, not so good in the second half of the season.
Which I think's probably their challenge, and it has been, is health. Like they need to keep their big name guys healthy and playing most of the season.
Already, Zach Williams, ACL, done for the year. Sammy Walsh had back surgery, probably missed the first 2 to 4 weeks. So, but especially the Twin Towers up front need to keep those boys healthy, as well as Batman and Robin in the middle there. But a couple of new recruits through the draft. They drafted Blues supporters, boys who were growing up. So Ollie Hollands and Lockie Cowan, they're both going to make their debuts on Thursday. That's been confirmed. So Ollie Hollands is the younger brother of Elijah Hollands, who's at Gold Coast Suns. So apparently did quite well on the wing for, I think, Vic Metro in the under-18s carnival last year. So he might slot into the wing and look to work the way into the middle. A lot of big body mids at Carlton, so he'll probably be an outside guy. And Blake Acres coming across from Freo's are probably another one of those outside runners. And I think they're just second year under Vossi now, so hopefully that brings a bit of improvement. Last year they were very hot and cold. They'd have a quarter where they kick 8 goals, and then the next quarter get 0 goals or 1 goal. They need to be a bit more consistent, not so hot and cold. And I hope Big H and Charlie have been working on their goal kicking over summer, because especially Harry, when he takes a mark, you're just like, oh man, this could go absolutely
crossing
anywhere.
every
Drop punt, in the words of Big Jason Dunstall, the chief, a drop punt.
So whoever kind of straightened up Levi Casbolt a few years ago, hope they haven't been having some chats with Harry, because he can clunk him, but in that game against Collingwood at the end, a couple of points, goals, and it's a different story. So need to convert on those chances, and have a plan B when Harry and Charlie aren't clunking them, because that seemed like there was a plan A last year, but not necessarily plan B or plan C if plan A wasn't working.
There's a world where Big H kicks 80 goals if he can kick straight. Like I don't think that
win the
is.
Coleman.
I don't think that's an outlandish statement. I'm on him, of course. I think they go top 4.
Beam you up.
Beam me out. Sack Kings, say hello. Can they mix it with your Geelongs, with your Melbourne Demons, with your Brisbane Lions? That will be the question. But I think, as I said, for Brisbane and anything outside of top 4 being unders, not making the top 8 this year there needs to be systematic review at Carlton. I think.
I might be a bit bearish on them compared to you boys. Like I want to see it to believe it. So you got to make it into the finals before I consider your top 4 team. Like let's aim for the top 8 to start with,
and then go from there.
Yeah.
Bookies have them at $10 to win the whole thing. It's
throwing your money away. Didn't you buy premiership tickets after 2 games last year?
I was definitely a little bit too bullish early on after last year. Big start last year, winning against Richmond. Can they roll it into Thursday night? Time will tell. All right, let's go over to Collingwood and talk about the Maggies. They finished 4th last year, 16 games won, probably exceeded everyone's expectations from the start of the year, and they get a massive signing in Tom Mitchell coming across, the 2018 Brownlow medalist, perennial fantasy pig.
Especially against Collingwood in the past. So,
Yeah.
Now pulling on the black and white and hopefully, for their sake, doing some of that to some other teams.
What do we think of Collingwood as a franchise this year?
I mean, they won so many close games last year.
Was it 10 by single digits?
Yeah.
It was something like that, wasn't it?
So, I mean, I think it's hard to do that again. Like, just statistically odd-wise, like you flip a coin that many times kind of thing, bounce of a ball goes one way or the other. Like, to get 16 wins again, I probably don't see that happening. Of course, other news for the club, first time I think in 9 years that Scott Pendlebury is not the captain. Now got the Darcy Moore Collingwood through and through. His dad played for them. But
is Darcy coming back from...
No, he was healthy.
He was there most of last year.
It's kind of probably fringe All Oz as a kind of centre half back. So interesting to see how he. Yeah,
I thought he was injured at one
long
point.
time.
Like he broke his leg or something.
But Pendle's been a captain.
I can't remember every injury in every sport. So.
No, you can't.
Well, the big man who was injured for a lot of last year that is now no longer at the club.
Big
Brody Grundy, but they seemed to go okay last year without him with Darcy Cameron and Mason Cox as the combo. Yep. So, of course, see how those two go a full season now. But, maybe a touch back from where they were last year. Just don't see them winning as many close games.
For the Pies, I think it has to do with how many headlines they got. It seems the more headlines they were in last year, the better they played. So.
Ginnivan's off to a good start. So they're going to win on Friday night against the Cats then.
Yeah, it could be.
That'd be a huge start to the season.
I'll go with you, Steamer. I think a touch unders last year. I've got them in the top 8, but in that 5th to 8 and having to play an elimination final come September. Any news down the end there?
No, not really.
What about Bombers?
Good segue into your team. 15th last year. It's won 7 games. Haven't recruited heavily. So we'll have to talk about their new recruit in Elijah Satas, I think is the pronunciation on that one. 5th overall draft pick. He's a midfielder, maybe play out on the wing. But outside of him, no massive names there. Sam Wiedemann maybe starts in there 22.
Huge losses, not really. I just don't think the Bombers have done anything.
And
of note, which is
going to losses. There's a few from like Devon Smith and Michael Hurley retiring.
Most of Essendon's news in the off season was
who's the coach.
From the admin, the
front house sort of stuff.
Front of house rather than the playing group, and maybe that stopped potential free agents, potential recruits from looking the Bombers' way of that uncertainty of who's going to be the coach, who's going to be the CEO, all those kinds of things. You're not confident you're stepping into a stable place with a clear vision going forward. So, of course, don't often see a guy who's had a chance being a head coach before get a second crack at it. Of course, last year, Carlton, Michael Voss was one, and now it's Brad Scott.
With Scott
Bombers, so, I mean, if he's been watching his brother, talking to his brother, maybe he's learned a few things. But, feels like much of the same from the Bombers again this year.
Is there a worse team in the AFL?
Is there a worse team?
Hawthorn
I think in about 2 or 3 letters' time.
Kangaroo.
I'm certainly hoping so.
Do you think, as a comparison, that Hawthorn, though, might have more young talent that maybe they could progress? I just don't see the Bombers progressing. I just don't see where they improve over last year.
They're probably not improving over last year, but they're probably not. I can't imagine they're doing any worse.
Yeah,
they did have a lot of
second last.
I guess it depends. They've got kind of big name mids, but a lot of the knock on the Bombers was the mids and the other guys doing the defensive running, like Merritt, Parish, Shield,
Doing
love
the
the
extra work.
handballs, love the
Yeah.
rack up the little 15-metre kicks for the fantasy points, but you don't see those guys being the ones to lay the wood in the midfield and put the pressure on. And it was famous kind of Luke Parker doing the shrug at the Bombers, and so I mean that's where they can get better. Maybe that's the coaching, the kind of put the hard nose on them, put the defense. Because they could certainly leak goals in rapid succession. So maybe the coaching is where they. But again, I don't know. I thought Ben Rutten was pretty harshly dealt with.
Yes.
So see how Scott goes in his second crack at it. If he's learned from his past goes.
I don't think they're bottom two in the AFL. I think there's some teams that we'll talk about upcoming that aren't as well off as the Bombers look for now. Having said that, I don't think they bother the top 8 this year.
1 or 2 injuries and they could go south very, very quickly.
Yep.
Oh, heave-ho, we have Freo. Sort of like Collingwood, played a little bit overs last year to what people had predicted. They won 15 games. They finished 5th, and they get a big in Luke Jackson. I was listening to a podcast with Max Gawn during the week in which he said Luke Jackson is already better than I was as a similar age. Big ins with him and Jaeger going over west. The Purple Army would have some big expectations for this year.
Yeah, certainly. I think they were ones that people probably didn't expect them to be a top 8 team last year, but they had spent a few years after kind of Ross the Boss had left where they invested in the draft picks and started to see the return on those. Andy Brayshaw, Caleb Sarong, Hayden Young off the halfback line, and so they are now reaping the rewards. Will Brodie was a great recruit from the Gold Coast, and now bring in established guys with a few years under their belt of O'Meara and Jackson. So I mean, they could be ones to take a next step. Like lots of those young kids, Brayshaw, Sarong, now really getting into their prime of being. Brayshaw's name was in the mix for Brownlow last year, and
top 5, wasn't he?
Yeah, and it's now that Nat Fyfe doesn't have to carry the load for them. He can hang around the forward line and jag a few sausage rolls, and only real kind of loss the Barramundi after many years is finally
the oldest man in the AFL formerly.
He's hung him up. They had a few the big men leave, Lob and Meek, but of course got Jackson as a ready-made replacement there. So I think finals again for the Purple Army, and definitely the best team out of Western Australia again this year, I would say.
What do you think? Because we'll talk about it when we get to the Demons, the Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson. Like, how are they? Is that a easier split than say Gawn and Grundy is, or do you think they've got another Twin Towers?
Yeah, they had Rory Lobb and Darcy last year, and it seemed that Lobb played mostly as a forward and Darcy mostly as a ruck, and then the occasional swap. So maybe that's the role they go with again. So, they've kind of tried it out before, so it shouldn't be new territory for them.
It is an interesting point that you make, and we'll maybe cross back to it when we talk about the Demons, but having 2 of the best 10 or 12 talls in the AFLs sitting on the list of Freo and Melbourne, it's interesting, and it's it's amplified when we talk about Brodie Grundy going over to Melbourne, but it's maybe it's the way that the game's going is these guys that can chop out and be an elite forward as well.
Is it better to have them than not have them, and have those guys that struggle with their one ruckman, the big guy gets injured and then they have to struggle then to fill in.
Freo, it was either we get him or he goes to the Eagles. So
Yeah.
When he's looking to come back west, so you kind of even if it's just a dick you across down right.
I agree.
Yeah, we'll have him. Thank you.
For me, I feel the Dockers are pretty much in the same spot they were last year, whereas not a lot of people talking about them. They're kind of, again, that dark horse team that'll play finals footy and be competitive when it matters. So it's probably a product, of course, being in Western Australia that, they kind of get forgotten about a little bit, but compared to some of the top 4 teams, the big teams that we think are going to be there, but I think they will definitely be there and thereabouts.
Sportsbet has them at 15-1, which is sort of lower end of the top 8.
It's very low.
It's potentially good value.
All right, let's talk about the reigning premiers. Geelong, they were too old, too slow last year, apparently.
Did they get any younger or did they just get older?
Well, Selwood retires, which probably brings the average age down slightly, but they will have to rely on a lot of blokes that are still long in the tooth, but most pundits have them playing pretty well this year. Let's talk about Jack Bowes. Pretty cheap pickup.
Yeah, so I said to you guys before, fans of NFL and the show, the league, fantasy football, and there was a term in there called trade rape. And that is what Geelong did to Gold Coast, because they got pick 7 and they got Jack Bowes, and I think it was a pack of chips they gave back to the Suns in return, which, I mean, it speaks volumes probably to where Gold Coast and Geelong are as organisations.
Yes.
So, bring in Bowes. A few other younger guys that are probably just going to be on the fringe, but they might be starting to bring in that next generation. So Tanner Bruin from GWS and Ollie Henry comes across from Collingwood, joins up with his brother Max at the Cats. So brought in a few of those younger guys that supplement the old fellas as well. Danger takes over from the most captain of all time.
What do you think of Danger as a captain?
I mean, he played a great grand final, and he was probably second best on ground. He contrast to what I said about Jordan Dawson. He is a guy who's going to throw himself around, body on the line, head over the footy, which, I mean, that was very much Selwood to a T. So, but I mean, he's only probably got a year or 2 left in him.
Maybe come.
Yeah, I mean, he crossed over 300 games last year or something. So, certainly not a long-termer, but... I think
but as a veteran leader in the club, it probably makes sense.
Natural born leader, I think.
Very well respected across the league.
Did he captain before, or is this his first captaincy?
No, he was never skipper at Adelaide.
I didn't think he was. And I think Jeremy Cameron's got a baby during their game, so there's potential he might leave at half-time.
Due date, because a few of us know about these things.
Due
dates rarely work out exactly on, but I think the due date's between round 1 and round 2. He said if it happens before Friday night, he's not playing. If at half time he gets a phone call, he's
in the taxi.
Midway through the game. He's been pretty clear with the club, but expecting little bub sometime soon. So hopefully that goes all well for the Cameron family.
Big jazz up.
Yeah, definitely.
Do we think the Cats are the team to chase again this year? They're the yardstick you got to kind of measure up to and have to beat if you want to win the flag this year?
I think it's Melbourne. That's my personal thoughts. I think the Demons have gotten better. I don't see how Geelong have gotten better. But we to jump codes and we talk about the Melbourne Storm and teams that just year after year are able to produce. You
expect like them and Richmond. You kind of expect them to be there in the finals, and you have to. If you want to win the flag, you really have to go through them to do it. So I think they're definitely going to still be there as those gatekeepers, and they've got still a talented list where they can win the comp again.
Yeah, I'm not writing them off.
No, God.
2020, they're in the granny. 2021, they probably should have been minor premiers. Let that slip with a bad last quarter against Melbourne, and then last year, obviously, premiers. So, I'm not going to write them off from doing the same again this year.
Yeah, we're thinking 1 or 2.
I still feel top 4. Like, let me preface that.
Yeah.
I think Melbourne look better.
Taking another step.
Yeah. Gold Coast Suns finished 12th last year, respectable 12th, won 10 games. friend of the Esky, I suppose, Tom Berry, going over from
DJ.
Brisbane Lions. Do you think he'll slot straight in?
Down the highway, isn't it?
Down the highway.
South,
Yes,
yes.
down the highway.
Not up to the Dolphins.
Yeah, from what I've seen, he's been playing all preseason. He's been getting good feedback from all the coaches and what he's doing, his role in there. So I think he's going to get a decent amount of game time in the middle. Which is what he was after. It was going to be very hard to break into Brisbane, into Lions on a regular basis with the middles they've got there. So and the small forwards. So I think he fit well down there. The Suns.
Rankin leaves a hole that can be filled by someone else. So. TJ might be that man. We could be good if he got a steady crack at the top level. Seems to be a guy has dominated at the one level down, but hasn't got a steady.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that does more of that gritty work that we just talked about. Like he's an absolute tackling machine, and he just needs to put together.
Loves a bit of mud on the knees.
Yeah. That I guess his positional play and being able to. Transition that defense work into offensive work and then get results where it's ending up on, scoring assists and getting points on the board. That's really where he needs to take his game to the next level. And I think he's got the ability to do it, definitely. I think he's more talented than Jared is. Well, I think he's got more grit than Jared did. So Jared's just bigger. He's got way more size. So.
Shots fired.
It's a good family. So either way, I think he'll do well there.
Are you going to do like Mama Kelsey do?
Yeah. I'm gonna.
Now both.
Well, if they send me a freebie jersey, I'll cut it up. But I'm not going to buy one of each one and then do it myself.
Whoever sends you a jersey first is your new team.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, fair.
Hoping for some decent results out of Queensland. Hope to see the Suns maybe get to 500, which maybe makes them a gentleman's 10th, as Peps likes to say. So if they can keep progressing forward, that would be good. But I feel like they're probably still roughly where they are now.
Yeah, I do wonder if they don't make finals, which I probably don't see them doing, whether the seat gets a bit warm under Stewie Dew.
Well, it was warm last year, that was for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's always been warm.
It's humid, different.
They're $51 to win the whole thing, so sort of sitting in that sort of outside the top 8, but not absolute poo slingers kind of.
They're not the Bombers, as we discussed earlier.
Well, they actually are, according to Sportsbet. They're $51.
Yeah, that's all right. Stick that up your
Let's talk about GWS, a team which the bookies have even lower. They finished 16th last year. They only won 6 games, and they lose some really talented midfielders in Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper, both going over to Richmond, and a young talent in Bobby Hill, who showed a little bit going to Collingwood. I don't think we mentioned him when we spoke about the Magpies. Aaron Cadman, they get the number 1 draft pick. I saw a few memes getting around. Batuta, I think, did a little bit of work about, I'm glad to go leave Victoria to go play for this franchise and then come back to Victoria or elsewhere within 2 or 3 years. Yep. It kind of seems where the Giants are at the moment, is that the AFL's thrown everything at them, and maintaining it long term seems to be an issue. We spoke about teams bouncing back after getting flogged in a final series, or in a grand final, I should say. Before pre-show, and then we'll talk about the Swans. But GWS under the same sort of banner.
Have they lost interest? Is interest waning in GWS? Being second fiddle in Sydney, and then of course with league kind of heartland. Is the club
the honeymoon
crisis?
The honeymoon period is definitely over, but they've had a reasonable amount of success as well,
especially when you compare them to the team that we just went through. Gold Coast been in the league one more year, never played finals. GWS have played finals often. Played grand final. So in that sense, like, they have had some success, but I think it's a flooded market, that Western Sydney market, isn't it? With and the Sydney side is not well known for leaving home and going out and supporting the teams of whatever code it is. So,
Yep.
I think news for them, new coach this year, because, of course, Leon left fairly early into last season. So Adam Kingsley, I think he's a former Richmond and Port player, still looks like he's been in the gym. Probably
I'm saying that. He's
best rig amongst the coaches. So he might be bringing the heat. Come on, fellas, if I've got this one, you'll be throwing the iron around. So, whether they start to kind of reflect that bit of muscle up, tough nose. But I think there'll be opportunities with Taranto and Hopper gone for a few of their other young guys. Finn Callahan was one who looked pretty good in the preseason matches, but I think there'll be ones to struggle. Cadman is these tall guys, they're project guys, they're not guys that
year one. Jamara comes to mind.
Like Ashcroft, they're not going to come in, and Dacos, they're not going to be instant contributions from them, but the long burn, the slow burn. So you don't see them getting better than they were last year, and they won 6 games last year.
Yep.
Yeah. New captain?
Toby Green. So, buff coach, feisty skipper. They might be a bit feisty, the Giants, but might not get many wins.
I think a lot of their wins kind of are dependent on Toby Green because the amount of matches he has missed recently, they don't really do well without him, and then struggle to kind of recapture any momentum or mojo once he comes back. So I think, if they're going to need a lot out of Toby Green to potentially win matches and keep them off the bottom of the table.
And hopefully, like Stephen Canelio now as no longer skipper, his play dipped as skipper. And hopefully he now has that weight off his shoulders and his play returns to what it was before, because he was quite a good footballer before having the captaincy. And he is now that clear leader of that midfield without Taranto and Hopper. So where he had been, Leon had him front, forward line, mid, back and forth. He'll be a out and out mid now.
So Toby's the captain. Does that mean he can touch referees now? Can you have a friendly?
Well, they call it umpires.
Umpires.
Nobody can do that.
Yeah. No friendly.
Should have learned his lesson.
Yeah, well, I jest.
Maybe bottom 4 for the G-men.
Yeah,
I'd agree.
tough season ahead.
Another team that the outlook isn't that bright is the Hawthorn Hawks. They finished 13th last year, probably over expectations last year, finishing 13th. But then you lose names like Jack Gunston, Big Boy McAvoy, Tom Mitchell, Jaeger O'Meara, and didn't really recruit that heavily. Is it just going to be too much of a tall order for Hawthorn this year?
Yeah, I think they've scrapped. All those guys are old boys, aren't they? And they're going to have a very young team. Now it's second year with Sam Mitchell in charge, and so Carl Amon coming across from Port.
Probably their biggest name recruit.
And then Cam McKenzie was the number 7 pick. Especially fantasy players are hot on him as he's shown some promise with 24 touches and a goal against the Magpies in the trial game. So, it's going to be opportunities aplenty at the Hawks for young guys to kind of cement their spots with Jaeger and Titch moving on. There's midfield minutes to be had, and hard to see them really, with losing all that experience, hard to see them really pressing finals or
they're not a top 8 side. There's too many good quality sides ahead of them for them to compete like that.
We can probably all go out on a limb and say they're not a top 8 side. Are they a bottom 2 side?
I don't think they're that bad. I think they've got young. Really, they're one of those teams that've got young talent that needs to play overs for them to do anything this year. So it's whether those guys can take a step. You guys can come in and take that step, and they can play well enough to maybe sniff the 8. But I doubt it. I think where they finished last year, 13th, is probably their ceiling, and hopefully the floor doesn't fall out and they end up dead last.
Same thoughts?
Yeah, I think last year was the Roos and Eagles bottom 2. I'd probably see the Eagles everything went wrong for them last year, so I don't see them being a bottom 2 side again.
Probably win more than 2 games.
Yeah, I mean,
they were so banged up.
Maybe the team we just spoke about, the Giants, the Hawks, and the Roos, maybe they're around the bottom 3. So, yeah.
I'd like to be surprised, but yeah, I've got Hawthorn as a bottom 2 side this year. On the other end of the spectrum, a team that I've got as a top 2 side, and I just said that I think they are the team to beat this year, the Melbourne Demons. Finished second last year, 16-6, 2021 premiers, and bring in Brodie Grundy. So are we going with Grawn or are we going with Gaundy? I think Grawn is better.
Braun?
Yes.
Yeah.
Grawn? Grow!
Yeah, it's got a bit more of that. You can draw it out, can't you?
Put a few W's in the notes, you know. Where do we see Melbourne this year? Adding, a bloke who most people used to have as a top 3 ruck in the AFL. And
two-time All-Australian, I think. So.
And what's his role going to be? Joining the likes of Max Gawn and, arguably having the best 1-2 punch out of talls that we've seen in the AFL.
How do they keep that roster together? Are they nicking a sombrero from the
Roosters? There could be a bit of a sombrero going. I think.
How do they get this team under the salary cap?
I know he was on a massive contract at Collingwood. I don't know how it works with them taking on parts of his contract. Have you heard much from?
No, because I think that was
South
part
Australia,
of the reason why the Magpies were offloading him. Was kind of
Funny,
contract, but yeah, like I know, maybe it's just like I know Track and Clary and Brayshaw have signed
Massive
long deals. So maybe that's the way that they can give
less
guys
cap hit, more
stability.
guarantees.
Kind of maybe they're on less per year, but you're kind of spreading it out more. But I don't know how much Max would be on as skipper as well. But
I think he'd be on decent coin.
yeah, you would. You think, but. Yeah, maybe a good question. Maybe need to call up the accountant.
Get out the books.
And go check out the books of the Demons. These teams that wear red and blue and might need to be under the microscope. But I think Tom McDonald is a key part for this team. Injured for a lot of the second half of last year, and their forward line did not look the same without him. And I mean they were. First half of the season, I think they were 10 in a row. They started red hot, and then they actually crashed out of the finals in straight sets. So,
I guess that the question of where does Grundy fit? Do they play them both at the same time? Does Grundy end up being a big tall up front? Like, how do you think? Is that one of the reasons why they brought him in to maybe help with some coverage there?
with
some big men.
Yeah, well, I think Obviously, they lose Luke Jackson. Sam Wiedemann was another one they tried, and he's off to the Bombers, actually, I think. So, but they brought in Josh Shackey. So, yeah, it is one of those rucks has to be playing as a forward with Tom McDonald, and maybe Shackey's your third or your kind of your VFL guy that steps up if someone gets injured. But that's the biggest question mark for the Demons. I think they're tall forwards because, of course, their tall backs are elite. The big 3 in the middle are elite, and so it's the sorting out that mix of their tall forwards.
So silly question. Do you think who is the less gangly one? Do you think actually Max Gawn maybe is potentially more likely? Is Grundy maybe a better ruck than he would be as a guy playing in the forwards, and maybe reverse it? Or
no, I think both of them will spend most of the time on the field. I think Gawn will be their number 1 ruckman. I think Grundy will start forward and chop out for Gawn. I think that's the way that they'll line up.
Very good.
Yeah, so very similar to Jackson's.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, fill the Jackson role.
Yeah, no one's going to go in there and take that. The club captain,
agree,
number 1 ruck position away.
Whether they'd switch it just purely based on the talent, maximising the talents of each
maximising, I like it. Bloke kicked 5 goals in a prelim final. Like I get sort of the thinking behind it, But I also just think if it ain't broke, you don't fix it.
Yeah.
And Gawn's a skip.
He's the number one ruckman in the
He's the
country.
number one ruckman, has been in the league for a long time.
Don't move it.
And Brodie Grundy, the unicorn, comes in and starts forward and chops out.
So it works for him.
I think it will. Let's talk about their Kangaroos. Got the spoon last year, won 2 games, but bring in four-time premiership winning coach in Alistair Clarkson. Didn't recruit very heavily. No one really expects too much of them outside of having this super coach. If we like to make the rugby league comparisons, the Dolphins have started pretty well with a super coach and not much on their list. Maybe it's apples and oranges, but time will tell.
The Dolphins didn't also trade away their best young talent. Best young talent wanted out of the club. Didn't want to anything to do with them. So it's a tough spot to be in, I think, for the Kangaroos. I can't really see them progressing from where they were.
Referring to last year's number 1 pick, Horn Francis. So he is now at Port Adelaide. But I think they picked up the number 2 and the number 3 pick. So Harry Sheasel, number 3 pick. You probably have a bit of fun with that last name.
Cheezel.
Cheasel, maybe Harry the Weasel or something.
Oh, the Weasel. The Weasel, a few goals.
Weasel, yeah.
Depends if he's a grub or not.
Little small forward, so...
There's a Simpsons joke there, isn't he?
Yeah, maybe.
The human, the weaseliest of all the animals, except maybe the weasel. Something along those lines. Kangaroos, no one expects anything, do we?
If they can avoid the spoon, that'll be a season, like a successful season for them.
As we said earlier, no expectations.
No disappointments.
That's a good place to be. They can only go up. All the same, can't go any lower.
Yeah.
I think they'll be hoping that Hawthorn and GWS aren't very sticky.
One expectation, move to Hobart.
Yeah,
Well, I think Hobart wants their own team, so
and there hasn't been
that's
a whole lot of
pretty
traction around a relocation. Although the AFL seems pretty set on a Hobart team, they're going to pump a bunch of money into building a stadium, apparently.
Yep.
But yeah, from all reports through the whole summer is that it wants to be a
New team, new
franchise,
New franchise.
Maybe green, yellow, and
Don't want
red.
anyone
Yep.
sloppy second.
No sloppy seconds. No
especially
sloppy
as
seconds.
sloppy as the Kangaroos are.
Nothing better than the sloppy seconds off a kangaroo. Boys, I don't expect too much. Sportsbet's got them at 151 to 1 to take out the whole thing this year, which is joint longest odds with the Hawthorn Hawks.
Throwing your money away. You're doing that.
I'd say so. Port Adelaide started last year really, really badly. I think they lost their first 5 games and then sort of steadied the ship a little bit. Probably the big talking point is, as aforementioned, Jason Horne-Francis going back. He's looking strong. He's looking fit by all accounts from the pre-season. Adelaide boy at heart. Didn't want to be there at North Melbourne, it seems. Do we think a young 19, maybe pushing 20-year-old comes in and has an immediate impact for him?
He'll have some impact. I think does he get the midfield minutes? I think that now Connor Rozee he was All-Australian last year, had been that guy that they picked up, number 5 pick in the draft, played a bit forward early on, now getting those midfield minutes. Zach Butters is another one. Of course, Ollie Wine's not that far removed from a Brownlow. The Travis, the good bloke, he's still kicking around. So, does the Hornet get heaps of mid-minutes, or is he asked to, look what Rozee did. He spent the first couple of years buying his time on the half-forward flank, kicking a few goals. That's your role for the team this year, and we'll look to bring you into the mids on a full-time in a year or two's time. That might be where he is at the moment, and that's Robbie Gray retired, so got that role to fill of that small forward who can kick some goals. So maybe that's where he fits in. And
Can they wait that long though?
Well,
Do they need him to do more?
yeah, but they're a tough one to figure out because as Pep's
They-
alluded to, they started so poorly.
I think we did this last year. Everyone was expecting them to be a top 8 squad after the year before. Like, they should keep going. And
the 2 seasons before that, they were prelim finalists. So, can they return to that level? No.
You don't think?
Not to prelims, no.
Prelims.
I would say
Sneak in the 8?
Yes. Yep. I think so.
Need to start well, though.
Yeah, I mean, they finished better. They finished like a top 8 team. It just gave everyone a 5-game head start, which is not advisable.
Yes. Okay. What do you think about Junior going over there as well?
Yeah, interesting. I think, especially a tough one for the Eagles because he spent a bit of time away from the game, being a bit of a naughty boy with the WADA suspension. So Eagles stuck by him during that time. So the Eagles fans and the Eagles clubs probably a bit disappointed to see him make the move. I'm not sure if he's actually a native South Australian or not, whether it was a new opportunity or a call home. But and maybe he's another one trying to fill that. Robbie Gray, Stephen Motlop's another kind of small forward that they've retired, another shoes to fill. So, does he make a big impact for this team? Enough to...
I think Hornet will get all the headlines, but I think
Certainly
maybe it's might have gone under the radar a little bit there.
I feel like he is native SA, Monks, that you got in there?
Yeah. Yes, his original team, Glenelg, even. Yep. Schooled in Melbourne though. Went to Xavier College.
Might have done a bit of boarding school or something like that.
Bit of Eddie Betts about that. Good book. Good book. Thoughts? I think they could be knocking on the door of the 8.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment. They'll be there and thereabouts, and maybe we need one of those other squads to maybe falter for them to sneak into the 8.
I mean, that's like, I think typically in the AFL, usually about 5 or 6 of the teams that made the 8 the year before make it again. So you think, if you're on the outside looking in.
So Carlton's in.
Yep.
And maybe Port Adelaide.
But then, who comes out's the questions.
And speaking of a team, that's a great segue into the Richmond Tigers, who finished 7th last year. Is that dynasty coming to an end? They still won 13 games last year and some pretty handy ins this year with Jacob Hopper and Tim Taranto, as we mentioned, coming across from GWS. But the outs are big. And what are we looking at there? 800 games of AFL football in Lambert, Edwards and Caddy?
Yeah, well, 300 just for Edwards, I think. But all those guys who are all triple premiership players. Of course, the Tigers, I think they played a classic against the Lions in the final, so they made the finals and weren't that far off progressing. So Hopper and Taranto are great ins for them. Is that enough to kind of keep the momentum? Losing those guys of Edwards and Lambert and Caddy, are Taranto and Hopper going to fill that void?
I feel for Richmond, it always seems to boil down to one bloke's name, and that's what's going on with Dusty.
Dusty?
Where's Dusty Martin at? I think he's the last time I think when we looked at the AFL, he's kind of staying put. He's not moving. He's in a good spot, and I think that's probably will go a long way to where Richmond end up finishing this year.
Interesting that you mentioned that. For what it's worth, I had an 8-hour drive back from Melbourne yesterday. Listened to a few podcasts with the wife, and something came up about the biggest name in the AFL, and I said to her, "Well, Dustin Martin," and she said, "Well, no, I haven't heard much recently." And I said, "Well, the bloke's a 3-time Norm Smith medalist. He's arguably the most accomplished man. Arguably the most accomplished man when it comes to winning success and finals prowess." But where is Dusty at, and is he that same sort of game changing?
We seemed every week to be
player?
doing Dusty Watch last year. So if will he or won't he play, and whether he's in the right space to be able to play, the media hounding him, etc., etc. It's just like, I think if Dusty's in a good spot, then Richmond will be in a good spot.
Here's a take. I think their most important player is Tom Lynch.
I don't mind that.
Yeah,
I don't mind that at all.
I mean, the heights of like Dusty's 2017 season of where he just blitzed everything of Brownlow, Norm Smith, all the accolades, all the trophies. They're like one of the best seasons ever. So like his best is amongst the very best all time, and he's no longer that player.
No,
I mean, he's still a very good football player. But I think now Tom Lynch is their best or their most important player for that team to have success.
Can I throw out another name? Maybe Shea Bolton as well.
Well, he's been groomed as the heir apparent.
Yes.
To Dusty.
So with you, as you say, is Dusty kind of getting older? Does Bolton need to take that next step to then fill in those gaps for Dusty as well? And both of them can be play together as elite.
Bolton's very good at doing the flashy and doing the mercurial, and it's like as Dusty was, but it's doing that often, consistent, every week, every quarter, kind of thing. So
putting the team on his back and winning, kind of like Dusty does. And well, I guess in this case, playing with Dusty, does Dusty playing second fiddle? If they can work that all out and get some good chemistry going, and they still stay healthy, including Tom Lynch, then that team's still got a good list. They can still win.
3-time premiership coach, steering them around. Still got lots of those old heads of Rewalt and Cochin and all those guys who've been there, done that before. So for sure they're going to be a competitive team. They're going to cause a lot of teams some headaches.
Yeah, and stealing some talent from GWS doesn't hurt too. So.
Yeah.
Everyone got them sort of borderline in that 5th to 8th?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, come on, we've got to start knocking some teams out of the game.
I think that where they were last year is where they finished.
Yeah.
I think that's fair for them.
Yeah, it does feel hard. Like
it's hard, isn't it?
Like Geelong, it feels hard to write them off. It's hard to write them off.
Our top 8's about 12 teams at the moment, but that's it. But I agree, and a nice word that you used there before, mercurial. I don't think that's been thrown out on the podcast before. Will the expectation of Shea Bolton, get the better of him, or is he just that talented and can put a game on his back and change it?
Can he stay out of a few nightclubs and stay out of headlines? I think is probably the main thing. To go to your point, I think there's, we talk tiers. So there's probably that tier 1 where the guys we think will finish top 4. There's probably tier 2, which is, 5 through to maybe 12, where, any of those guys, any of those teams we think are 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th could actually sneak in and be 8. So I think that's probably the difference. I'd say, yes, there's probably 12 teams we think can be in the 8. There's probably 4 that are definite, and the others will then fight over the last 4 spots.
Given those tiers, I like that you've brought that up. Tier 1, can we say, is Melbourne, Geelong. Do we have Brisbane in Tier 1?
Based on pre-season form,
that's very hard.
Yes.
I mean, the Swans.
This is a big.
I was thinking Swans like either 3rd or 4th at the moment.
So that's a big tier 2 that you've got then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a big tier 2 at the moment. Where
just
8 teams for 4 spots.
Carlton, Collingwood, Richmond, Freo.
Yeah, going back to last year, you just watched that like 4 to 12. It was changing every single week. You just could not pick it.
Yeah, I think the second tier is a big tier, and like we keep saying, it's just one of those teams needs to falter for another team to then get that 8th spot and be playing finals.
On that note, we've still got 4 teams to talk about. Let's talk briefly about St Kilda. Again, played pretty well last year, given expectations. Started a little bit hot and then sort of fizzled towards the end. They finish an even 500. But Ross Lyon comes back. That is huge name coming back, but also lose some old heads in Jaron Geary, Dan Hanbury, and Paddy Ryder. Steam, your thoughts on the Saints?
They just don't excite me. Nothing really gets me going with the Saints. So they're very vanilla kind of thing. So
an average team that finishes 500.
I mean,
We're all putting.
They're all finishing 500.
but no, I think they take a step back this year. I think they finish worse than that. Jack Steele, he's the one guy who I'd say is not vanilla in there.
Canberra boy.
Yeah, love him. And Brad Crouch is a handy second fiddle. Max King, again, him and Harry need to go do goal kicking.
Yeah, kick him straight, son.
Together. Saints have been bad at goal kicking for years. So whether Ross straightens them up. But, yeah, they're already got a dire injury list. I don't think
They did last year as well.
You know, before we were trying to look at their ins and their recruits, not heaps to be excited about. Mateus Philippou is their kind of the high number 10 draft pick. He probably gets a game straight away just because some of those other guys being injured. But, yeah, there's just nothing really gets the blood flowing with the Saints. If we're talking those tiers, I don't think they're in that tier 2.
Jesus,
I don't think they are.
That list is 10 guys long at the moment.
Yeah, they're banged up going into round 1. The only sort of other recruit of note is Zane Cordy, I suppose, coming over from the Dogs. But if you
important players to their team as well, like Billings, Jones,
Max King, Tim Membry.
Yeah, already injured, and for what's that, 6 to 9
Substantial
weeks
time,
for a few of them kind of thing. So,
Do you think this year then for Ross, and maybe the reason why they didn't recruit heavily is maybe to see what he's got and what with the current guys who can play him, stay healthy, and then maybe they attack it next year with let's go out and fill the holes, improve where we want to improve in the positions.
Maybe do what Sam Mitchell's done at the Hawks of who do I want to keep, who do I want to get rid of.
Play some young boys, see if they've got the
just
talent.
have a season, and the Hawks won 8 games last year, so maybe that's where the Saints are at this year. Win 8 games, finish 13th, 14th. See who you want to keep, see who you want to get rid of.
Get a decent pick, draft some guys.
Go on from there.
I agree.
Swannies, 16 games won last year, finished 3rd on the ladder, but got pretty handily taken care of come grand final day. We were speaking pre-show and alluded to
5 minutes ago,
alluded to it in the podcast. It doesn't bode well for teams that have been spanked in a grand final. The Western Bulldogs come to mind. The Adelaide Crows come to mind. The GWS Giants come to mind. Was this a bit too much of a case of rapid ascendancy and then don't have the list to support it, or are we confident in these young guys in Chad Warner and Errol Goulden and the likes coming in and filling the big shoes that they will need to fill as they retire?
I don't know. I feel like I was hot on them last year.
Bullish, I would say.
In this, exactly 12 months ago, I said Melbourne, Sydney, GF. So I thought those young guys showed great promise and got there. But, I am very wary that the Doggies were in this spot 12 months ago and then didn't make the 8. I still feel like Sydney is a good team. They've got a great culture. Longmuir has been there forever. Mills, Parker, Rampy as their kind of leaders. Very stable, very settled.
Well, that was going to be my question. Would the difference be that they do have some core veterans that have been in the league for a very long time that maybe can stem the flow of, we got hammered and then play poorly the whole season, just can't get the foot going, right foot forward and get into this season? Do you think they'll have the right old heads there that they can, compared to, say, those 3 we just mentioned, that they can actually get into the season and still play good footy and get going?
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly.
It's hard, yeah. History is against them, but records are made to be broken.
Do you think they played overs last year? Do you think 3rd was their ceiling? And if that's their ceiling again this year, do you think they can be, that's my point, do you think they can be hit 3rd again or be better than that? Or do you think a regression is more likely?
Well, do we think that Melbourne got better? Did Brisbane get better?
Geelong really didn't get...
Geelong's taking a step back,
Who else was around the top 4? Magpies, maybe So I think maybe
Magpies, maybe the Magpies.
So I think maybe they're fourth. Yeah. Maybe of that tier two, they're 2A.
Yeah, 2A.
Maybe.
1.5.
Yeah.
They're sitting somewhere in between.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because the bookies have those aforementioned teams in Geelong, Melbourne and Brisbane all under 7s. And then Richmond surprisingly at 8s, but then there is this log jam of Carlton, Collingwood, Sydney at 10s. So according to the bookies, there's like this very clear top tier in Geelong and Melbourne. And then it kind of evens out into this big fat second tier. I think those young kids are guns. I think,
They are guns.
yeah,
They're definitely guns.
Like they're only going to get better. Obviously, you've got to think about Buddy Franklin and is this his last year?
Well, I guess that's the question.
AFL?
Can they spend a year licking their wounds to then have a go next year, knowing of course that, like you say, Buddy, they can only get so much out of Buddy for so long. So
I think on Warner Damo Barrett, the head guy at AFL, has him as the smoky for the Brownlows. That's
I've seen a bit
how
of that.
highly he's been rated, and I think Goulden got 45 touches and about 170 fantasy points in the warm-up matches. So again, he's probably the best kick in the AFL, and delivering inside forward 50 to Big Bud or Tommy Papley. I think tier 2A is where this one's sit.
Into a team that's probably not tier 2. West Coast had a horror run last year with injuries and the like. They only won 2 games. They do lose Josh Kennedy to retirement. We spoke about Rioli before, and Jack Redden. He's also hung up the boots. The biggest name coming in, probably Jaden Hunt over from the Melbourne Demons. 17th last year. We're hoping that they might be better than Kangaroos, Giants, perhaps.
Right. It can't go worse for the Eagles than it went last year. Remember, one of those 2 games that North won was against the Eagles, basically because they were playing a WAFL team. It was like 13
the reserve grade
guys getting a 6, getting their first game or something like that. So I think like guys like Oscar Allen didn't play at all. Elliot Yeo hardly played. Dom Sheed hardly played. Shuey was a bit in and out. Nat Nui hardly played.
That's what concerns me looking at that list of injuries that knick-knacks on that. Though no official injury or no official return time, but
we'll see in the coming days as the teams come out.
The hope is guys like Allen, Shuey, Sheed, Yo in the team more often makes the Eagles a far better team. Jaden Hunt is an interesting one for them. They're notoriously, Eagles are a kick mark team, but his speed, his dash, bounce, run. So interesting to see how his playing style meshes with the Eagles and whether they still have that kick mark or whether they, finishing 17th last year, whether they scrap that in the bin and start with a new playing style, or I don't see them going as bad, but no return to the 8. Tier 3, let's say.
I tend to agree. I think Hawthorn and the Kangaroos have it harder moving forward through 2023, but agree. I don't think it's buying any finals tickets time for Weagles fans.
I agree.
Last team, Western Bulldogs, will wrap up our AFL chat for this evening. Snuck into the top 8, given a Carlton blunder last season.
They're one of the teams that they're out.
Yeah. We've got to put someone out of our top 12/top 8. The Bulldogs, we spoke about their midfield being up there with one of the best, deepest in the AFL. Tom Liberatore re-signs. Cody Waitman carrying an injury. Where do we see them this year?
So probably get their tools is where it's a bit of interest. Liam Jones missed last year, of course. whole vaccine thing. So he started at Bulldogs as a forward, came to Carlton, reinvented himself as a defender, and now he's back at the Doggies. Sam Darcy was another father-son pick, now third-generation dog. I think he played 3 games at the end of last year, so look to invest more time in him.
He would have stacked a few kgs on over the off-season as well.
Jamara's into his 3rd season now. Yeah, Norton would be about his 5th or 6th. So if they're going to get better, it'll be from those. It's their talls. Because, it's been their tall forwards and their tall defenders, which have been their weak spots. They feel a very hot and cold team to me. When they're hot, geez, they're on, often on Marvel, on the slick track kind of thing. But, when it's not a slick track, a bit heavy or a bit of rain or a bit of pressure gets applied, doesn't feel like they can go cold as well. It feels like Bevo, as a coach, is a bit like that as well. It's just a bit all over the shop.
Hot and cold beverages.
Yeah. As we said, we need some teams. We want some teams to go into the 8. So they only snuck in there at the end. So maybe they miss this year.
I'll 100% agree with you. Look at those outs: Zane Cordy, Josh Dunkley, Lockie Hunter, Steph Martin retires. Shaki we spoke about. Mitch Wallace delisted. He's a pretty handy bloke to be delisted. So Rory Lobb comes in. Liam Jones, who hasn't played AFL footy for a whole year, comes in. I don't think those ins outweigh those outs.
Yeah, I was just looking at Josh Bruce as well, coming back from his ACL. But it looks like they're going to play him in the back line. So
really,
I think
interesting.
Came in about halfway through last year. Because I guess it depends. Darcy seems to be a bit of a swing option, whether they go defence or attack with him.
An interesting squad.
Top 8 or out?
Let's go with out for these ones.
I think, we'll go out. Obviously, a few Carlton fans here probably want to ride that. But
I think they had such an elite mid, but it just didn't translate. It was on paper, it looked elite, and then on the pitch, I guess maybe the mid worked, but they just had nothing either side of it, out of the back line and out of the forward. So
look, we've spoken a lot about why they won't be as good. Tim English had his best year ever last year.
Good old Johnny English.
Johnny English. What's his name? Rowan Atkinson says hi. Marcus Bontempelli, arguably top 3 player in the AFL. Bailey Smith, if he can string together.
Avoid the lines and he'll be all right.
Yeah, well.
He had a haircut in the off-season. So might not be as recognisable this year.
There's a lot of reasons why they could be a top 8 side.
Yes.
So
they do have some talent on that list, for sure.
Fucking oath.
Yeah, they played at a final 2 years ago.
Well, GF 2021.
Yeah, so it's that list is still largely there from that final.
48 hours to go.
Let's go.
Get stuck in.
Yeah. Let's go. It's unusual sort of podcast here in that we're really, really interested in a lot of sports, but it is lovely, obviously, to have your insights here for us, team. We love our AFL. We probably are a little stronger on our league. So it's obviously it's
good time of year now, isn't it? Where the league.
Everything sort of. There was just that lull, wasn't there? There was that little lull through.
There's
February.
a few weeks there where I was like, what do we talk about?
Pablo Escobar in the pool, just trying to pass some time.
Cricket filled that lull a bit, but there's nothing like 9 games of footy on a weekend,
mate. If you're a sports fan, if you like a little punt, if you like a little scooey moi on the weekend, you've got nothing to whinge about for the next 28 weeks. So we're sorted. We're sorted for Aussie rules footy and the rugby league. I think we might chat about now.
Maybe we'll call it, and we'll do that on Friday.
We want to talk about it Friday? Wrap it up?
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk about some rugby league next time we see. Do you want to talk about this class action at all?
We'll cover it later.
Concussion, a lot of blokes.
It'd be interesting to see, with maybe a couple of games on our belt from the AFL as well, how they are treating some of those head knocks as well. with the recent headlines and storylines that we're getting in the NRL, and then following with this class action suit that was announced. I think one of the players went official yesterday, and then they've actually announced that it's not just him. Like there's a large suit with about 60 blokes on it, seeking like 120 mil at the moment. But whether that quickly expands players and money wise, as more people get it, more retired players kind of get interested in it. I'm not sure who the key pitfall. That's not how you say it. What's the not plaintiff word? Who's the
lead plaintiff?
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember
the face of it.
The face of it. I can't remember the
lead plaintiff.
Yeah, he played 130 odd games and said he had 30 concussions. So, and there's been a new big research study I think going on at the moment for concussions in the AFL, and on the back of that, this is where this clash action suit's coming from.
That's Max Rook, I think, or Rook from Geelong.
Geelong, yes, yeah. So I think more detail will come out about that in the coming days, and maybe we can tackle that on Friday with the return to regular scheduling for On The Esky.
You boys enjoyed a nice long weekend down the coast?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a few down the coast, I was down in
weddings.
Melbourne. It's great. 4 day work week should be the norm.
Can't disagree with that.
That'll
That'll do us.
Yep.
We'll call it there.
You want to talk about the UFC?
Thanks.
We'll do it Friday.
Do it Friday?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Only 3 days away.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
It's
Live Magpies and Cats.
Mm-hmm.
Who else is going to be live on?
There's
You'll have
Probably Brisbane.
2 screens up ahead of you.
the Broncos are playing Friday night.
Yeah, of course. It's Broncos. What are you talking about?
What else have we got?
It's Brisbane night football. Like, come on.
We need to talk about the NFL.
Free agency.
Yeah, massive night in the free agencies. NBA's ticking along.
EPL.
APL, Arsenal still looking pretty handy. Talk about the Dragons.
Winning the game. Yeah.
Mate, they're top 3. Whoever doubted them?
It helps when you start against Gold Coast. So.
Yeah, I suppose.
Technically.
the bye round one was a hard
Do they play Dolphins this week? Or do they play Dolphins next week?
They play Broncos.
They play Broncos. Yeah.
Broncos. A bit rival.
Yeah.
On Friday night?
Saturday.
Fake news.
Yeah.
What are our matchups? Manly Para.
So that's Thursday night. Friday night we've got Knights Dolphins.
Big one. Bunnies Chooks.
Yeah.
That's a big
Bashed the hell out of each other in their games last year. So plenty to talk about.
Yes.
That's
Plenty to
it.
talk about. Finishes off, Peppy.
That'll wrap us up. Thank you to Steam for joining us. We'll see you next time here on the Esky. Always appreciate your insights when it comes to Aussie rules footy, as well as cricket and general chit chat.
Everything.
When it comes to sports. We will see you again on the weekend where we talk about the other sports that we didn't cover tonight. Thank you to those that joined us in the chat and that are listening on the podcast platforms later in the week. And we'll see you all on the weekend to talk some rugby league, some NFL, some NBA, some soccer, some UFC perhaps.
All the major things.
Mm-hmm.
Catch you then.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hit your butt.